Okay, councillors, if you'd like to take your seats, then we will start. The bells have rung. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm Councillor Simon Wales, Chairman of the Cobtree Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of this committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, then can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. So item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies? No, we're all here. Item 2, substitute members. No substitutes for obvious reasons. And what's the thing say item 4? What happened to 3?
Oh, I think that is just a genuine mistake.
Item 3 is urgent items.
Yeah, it is.
There are no urgent items. Yeah. Item 4, we've just got the numbers have got something. Okay. Is notification of visiting members. He's not visiting. Oh, okay. Just a spectre. Oh, sorry, a spectator. Yes, that's what I meant to say. So, item 5 is disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by anybody here present? Yes, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. So as per item 62 of the agenda here, I remain involved with the community interest company that has backing from the Cobtree charity estate.
Thank you very much. It was noted last time as well, so thanks for that. And then the next item 6 is disclosures of lobbying. Has anybody been lobbied by anybody on the Cobtree? Good. I'll take that as no. The shake of heads doesn't really come through on the microphone, but thank you. Thank you, members. Item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. I move that all items are taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of July. Any points on their accuracy? Seem fine to me. It's all we can discuss. If none, ample fine. Good. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of July 2024 should be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Okay, this is the one we have to sign, is it? Or initials? I'll get to grips with this in the second time. The first time we're doing minutes.
Very exciting.
That's it, is it? Oh, no.
Oh, that's right. And can you just put your signature and the date on there as well, please?
And we are 20th and 30th. Okay, there we are. That's that duly done. Right, item 9 is petitions. Any petitions? There are no petitions this evening. Item 10, any questions for members of the public? There are no questions, so the same goes for the next item 11. Item 12, right, we got there, Paul. Cobtree Manor Estate financial position. If I could hand over to Mr. Holland.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is the regular update to the committee on the financial position of the estate. And there are full details of the Appendix A with the summary table shown on page 8 of your agenda. So at the end of August, there was a small deficit of just over £6,000 on the operational activities of the estate, and that's consistent with the projected deficit for the year of just under £7,000. There have been some one-off items that have made the position less favourable than it might have otherwise been. So this is the first full year of the new golf course contract. So we've obviously got a reduced level of income from that compared to previous years. So that's one of the reasons behind the small projected deficit this year. The spend against the hard landscaping budget in the Manor Park includes the cost of some emergency tree works that had to be undertaken. These were just over £7,000. Income from car parking at the Manor Park also continues to be down. Unfortunately, that's a reflection of a fall in visitor numbers to date this year. There's a charge of just under £6,000 against the Manor Park other income budget, and what that is, that's a write-off of an invoice. So as you may recall, there was a Christmas Lights Trail event in 2022 at the park. Unfortunately, the event operator ceased trading, and we've just been unable to recover this sum, unfortunately. The spend against Kent Life includes a dilapidations assessment that costs £5,000. It's good practice to carry out these assessments periodically just to check that there's been no impairment in the assets that could be chargeable to the contract operator, and that we didn't have a sort of budget for this. On the plus side, the return on the Charity Fund investment has been stronger than assumed, so we've seen £29,000 of income this year against a profile budget of £20,000. And finally, there is a separate report on the agenda that deals with the issue of gift aid income that we're now receiving, and the draft budgets for next year that will come to the next committee meeting will include some proposals for the future use of these sums. So that's all I've got to say on my report. Happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you very much. Short and to the point. Any questions from members? Yes, Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. In the next report, there's some references to the exercise which is being undertaken across all Maidstones parks around looking at opportunity around biodiversity net gain income and also the beneficial habitat enhancement. I understand, but that it's part of a bigger programme. However, is there any potential opportunity for Cobtree to kind of go it alone? Because there's a very long list at Maidstone which is going to need to be worked through. Some of them are bigger complex, like Moe Park. And it seems to me that there is a real opportunity to enhance the landscape and habitats on quite an important site up there on the scarp of the Downs and at the base of the Downs. And also potentially an opportunity to accrue some quite significant income. If you look at the credits for woodland and wetland and so on, which would be applicable at the site?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but I will find out for you and let you know. I'll make some inquiries. So.
Okay, thanks for that. Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Well, yeah, I just really wanted to say, clearly there's been a couple of unexpected impacts on the budget. I mean, 6,000 as a projected overspend doesn't feel unduly unreasonable given those impacts, so that's very welcome, I think. Is there any chance that we can claw back that last 6,000 over the winter months, or is that pretty much lost, do you think?
I mean, the main source of income at the moment is car parking, and obviously by its nature, we've probably gone through the peak season now. I mean, unless we get an exceptionally good weather at Christmas and half term, potentially we could get a little bit back. But yeah, probably in reality, we're probably limited opportunities. But I mean, so the investment income's doing quite well. If that continues to be strong, then that will certainly help. So I'd certainly hope it wouldn't be any worse than the 6,000 deficit. But it would be nice if we could get it back to break even, certainly.
Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm sorry I've been into the detail and had a look at a few of the numbers. So it's interesting when you draw comparison to the last quarter's report, how many overs and unders there are, and particularly the golf course. So it'd be nice to have some narrative, particularly on the income side, why that was lower than we projected. It's good to see some of these numbers sort of like coming in on a quarter-to-quarter basis, pretty consistent. The one that I'm interested, well, actually, I've got a couple I'm interested in particular. So the car parking at Manor Park, obviously car parking is a byproduct of footfall. And Katie, you might cover this in your next report, in which case we'll hold it. But, what can we do to up the footfall into the park? And whether part of that reduction is because the cafe wasn't operational for some of that period. So I'd just be interested in some narrative on that, then I'll ask you another question if that's okay.
Yeah, and I think that is covered in the estate update report, so hopefully we can add a bit more flesh to the bones on that. So, yeah.
Let me just try another couple if you want to proceed. So on the garden cottage, I realise that the investigation into the subsidence the report is awaited, but if in the other report, if you've got any steer on what that is, what you think that's going to look like and what the impact is, that would be useful. And my final one, I think, is one for Paul on Charity Fund. So the increased income, it looks like it's more than just a higher interest rate than we've benefited from. But when we come to setting the budget for next year, it would be good to hear, how you think we approach interest rates, because we're in a period of volatility. Thank you.
Charity fund does tend to be variable. It is obviously linked to the economy, so it'd be nice if it would. This has been fairly good, consistent returns. So, but yeah, I will certainly take that into account. Yeah.
I know charity funds are a funny beast, really, for investing in. They do fluctuate in a strange way, and they're always a bit of a lag behind everything else. So I'm treasurer of a charity myself, and they have charity funds, and you're always surprised by when it goes up and when it goes down. You think, well, why? But it's just the rate that they give you. I just have one question about the dilapidations assessment, maybe in the next report as well, but just was there anything that came up that needed doing as a result of the assessment?
Thank you, Chairman. If I can take that one, as it falls sort of like more to corporate property. So it's actually very good estate management practice to have these interim dilapidation reports. And we had obviously done for a number of our properties, one of which was the Kent Life estate. And actually, they're keeping the property in good condition. Yes, there are some things that have been noted, but they would be the things that are going to be noted anyway, that they wouldn't be expected to do until the last year of their lease. So actually nothing of significance to report. But obviously the interim dilapidations report has been shared with them, so they're fully aware, so there's going to be no surprises at the end of the lease.
Okay, appreciate that. And of course, they've got 5 years to go anyway, haven't they, which has just been extended. Lovely. Okay, so if there's nothing else on that section, let's move on. The next item is, over the page, item 13 is the Cobtree Estate update. So part over to Ms. Katie Exton.
Thank you, Chairman. Without taking you through the report, line by line, I just want to pick out a few points to cover. Members touched on the car parking and the car parking income at Cobtree Manor Country Park. We're not convinced that numbers or visitors to the park have actually dropped off. And so we are working now with parking services with regard to reinforcement, because we feel that people perhaps are taking a risk and not buying a ticket, rather than actually not visiting the Manor Park. The new cafe operator is continuing to work incredibly well from the location. We're receiving very satisfactory, actually better than satisfactory customer feedback. And so with the new operator there, one would have expected actually that we would have seen a slight increase in visiting numbers to the country park. What Mike will be doing and bringing forward to the next meeting of this group is some more detailed, a table of more detail showing increase and decrease in visitors numbers throughout the estate. And Mike's proposing that he brings those forward as a change for consideration in January. With regard to Garden Cottage that has been mentioned, that does require some underpinning work. The current situation with that is we have contractors who are pulling together a specification for the required works, and then we will go out to tender to receive quotes back in for the works. So again, that will be an update coming at a later date. Other things to note is the Elephant House. Works commenced in September, and this, if you recall, is to put in a small welfare facility which makes the building and its use a lot more flexible. We have agreement in principle with a beekeeper who will be taking a lease of the building, which we hope will be another attraction for the park and may attract people to come and learn about beekeeping. The golf course is performing incredibly well. The new tenant continues to increase the number of rounds there. Again, performance-wise, it's performing, dare I say, better than the previous tenant, and we will be bringing forward, or the new tenant will be bringing forward, site improvements, which obviously are to the building and to the course itself, and again, those will be updated accordingly. With Kent Life, that has experienced a slight dip or decrease in visitors' numbers, but on the whole, it is performing well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on that report? Or are we taking them all on the other one? Yes, Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Chairman. The issue around the kind of apiarist element and bringing in beehives was mentioned, and that was mentioned on the tour last time when we visited the site. There is a downside for biodiversity from introducing very high numbers of non-native livestock, really, essentially, in terms of native pollinators. And when we were up on site, we were discussing some potential mitigations, like leaving more wildflower grassland and just seeking to ensure there's, if you like, there's more nectar and pollen to go around for, you know, all of the bees, native and non-native. Thank you.
Okay. Was there a response needed on that? Was that more of a statement?
I hope that there is mitigation in terms of habitat, the appropriate habitat provision. I think that's all I'm stating. And if nobody else is coming in at this point, in relation to the site on the other side of Forstall Road, next to the motorway, there was quite a lot of discussion on site there about its future. There is a reference here that there is a renegotiation of a peppercorn lease to the young farmers. I mean, that's, you know, it's quite an important and large area of land. If we are leasing essentially public land on a peppercorn rent, I think we need to ensure that we're getting some, if you like, public goods as well. And therefore, I don't know if it's going far enough to just say within the clause, we will say that the biodiversity net gain should be considered and so on. I know that the young farmers are involved in conservation grazing as opposed to more kind of intensive livestock grazing. I suggest that we take a little bit more of a hard line in terms of ensuring that the grazing on the site is conservation grazing, i.e. at lower density, so that we actually do get other things living on that field other than cows, if that helps.
Perhaps there are two things we could ask Mike to come back with next time, or perhaps update us in the intervening time as well. I'd quite like to know what the young farmers do with the field, really, because it's just there. And increasing the peppercorn rent by a little, I mean, it's not, what's a little more than a peppercorn, really? I mean, 2 peppercorns would double it. Okay, anybody else on that? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Just a very quick question, really, in terms of the car parking numbers. I mean, obviously you're looking at the the potential reason for the change. I just wondered if and when I read it, I kind of, in my head, I could see, you know, a COVID being a driver of greater visits, because I think I may have gone there. But I wondered if there was a comparator with Moat Park. It's obviously had a new cafe similar sort of time frame, and whether or not they'd seen a dip or whether an increase, and just to see if there was some sort of comparator, because it may tell a different story. I don't know.
Thank you, Chairman. If we can answer or provide some information on that, I think that would be something that we can look into and come back to you with further information for the next meeting, if that's okay.
Of course, if the parking relies on pay and display, there's another reason that the numbers might have gone down, is that people aren't actually paying and displaying. As we happen to have the member parking services in the room, you might like to have a look at that. But any other method of changing that would be a bit too expensive to install, I would suspect, like number plate recognition and all that sort of thing would be far too expensive. But that's another reason. I think Mike was a bit worried about that anyway when we went round, wasn't he, talking about people who parked and then didn't pay. Okay, if there are no more questions or points on that item, thank you very much, Katie, for that update. And we'll move on to the next item, which is the Kent Life Gift Aid Investment, item 14. Is that Katie as well? Yes, okay, that's fine.
All right, thank you, Chairman. I think this is actually a really good news item, and this came about, Mike and I were in a meeting with the operators of Kent Life, and they mentioned gift aid to us, which we were a bit like, oh, how on earth is that going to work? And they actually use it for one of their other sites, Conkers, and they explained how it worked there. We took it back to our colleagues in finance, and we are where we are. That gift aid so far, at the moment, the figure for 15 months is 133,000 that has been raised just in gift aid alone. So, sort of like on balance, I think going forward we could predict that we should be receiving an additional 100,000 each year, which is just a brilliant addition to anybody's accounts, and we're very thankful for that. Just a chance conversation, and we are where we are. I know that Paul and Mike are going to be bringing forward a report in January which will cover in more detail about how we actually account for gift aid. We're seeking some advice at the moment from our auditors about how we can spend it or how we can't spend it, and there is a distinction which we're seeking additional advice on in what we're legally entitled or able to spend the money on versus what is the, say, public perception of what we should be spending the money on. And I think we've just got to be a little bit mindful that it may cause a bit of a sticky point with the paying public who are gift aiding this money, and also how Planning Solutions, who are our tenant at Kent Life, how they feel and indeed react to us saying, well, that's really great that we've managed to raise 100,000 on gift aid that has solely come from your visitors, but actually we're going to spend 80,000 in the Cobtree Manor Park, which I think legally we would be able to do under the rules of the gift aid and how we are allowed to spend it, but I'm not too sure how that would sit morally and the public's perception. So I think we just have to be a little bit mindful about spending the donations in other parts of the Cobtree estate. So we're getting some more information coming forward on that, and that again will be an update by Paul and Mike in January. We have had a request to spend some of the gift aid money on the provision of a new loo block at Kent Life. And we will be proceeding with that, with some of the gift aid profits will be going back into Kent Life. But overall, it seems that it's been probably the best way to be able to raise money that we would never ever have been able to raise before, to reinvest, and it is a reinvestment in the future and in the maintenance of the Cobtree estate. So yeah, very good news. Thank you.
Thanks. Your points of the gift aid are well made. It's thoughts that I had about whether they see the money as being raised by them, so it should be spent on their part of the estate. Although they wouldn't be there if the whole estate didn't exist. So that's the sort of counter-argument. I hope finance colleagues are taking this up with the thoughts about elsewhere. There must be other venues and other places where this could apply as well, so I'll leave that to Paul to take back. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a huge problem. The estate is the estate, and you know, it's for the benefit of the estate, but I do accept the nuance. I mean, I'm very happy that there's a suggestion that we propose option 3.4, which I'm very happy to propose in terms of the toilet investment. I'm a fan of toilets, quite useful. Hopefully the plans when they come forward will be low water versions. They'll be ecologically the best we can get, etc. But yeah, as a starter, I'm happy to suggest we move with that third option there.
Okay, moving down the line then, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo Councillor Jeffrey's comments about toilets are obviously very useful, and especially the distance we know from the marquee to the other main buildings would make it much more convenient. In terms of the ethics of whether or not that money should be spent at Kent Life, I think there will always be a bit of a pivot point, because when you go down the grant spectrum, you'll end up with those highly essential projects at the top. And as those get solved, if we were to retain all of that money in Kent Life, we might find ourselves spending on stuff that isn't as essential as other parts of the estate. So I think maintaining that flexibility, but keeping Kent Life at their requirements at the top all the time, they remain essential, is good practice. So on that basis, I would second the proposal by Councillor Jeffrey.
Councillor Howard, you indicated too.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just coming back to the point that Councillor Jeffrey raised around good design and sustainability in the new toilet block. I think we just really need some kind of reassurance that it is going to be energy and water efficient, but also explore things like green or living roofs, and that the drainage for the hard standing utilises something like a bioswale or something, so it becomes a feature, kind of a willow grown in a ditch or whatever, our forefathers. I think it fits quite well with the whole ethos of the museum. And on the latter point around the gift aid, I actually think that members of the public will take no issue with money being used either at Kent Life or within the park, the public park. I think where you might see more difficulty if we're buying something on the golf course, which is seen as though it's public, it is not perhaps kind of thought of in the same way as the park is, and I think we need to think about the way that we phrase the gift aid kind of permission on there, just to say that this could be used for X or Y sites, and then I think it will be fine.
Okay, thanks for that. Of course, we're expecting high-end toilets in a museum where you could equally install something in keeping with various parts of the history of the site. They'd be much more ecological and much cheaper. But there we are. That's not the point, I know. Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? So I'm moving on to the agreement on that. To contribute a maximum amount of up to 30,000, had that proposed and seconded. I would have recommended that anyway, so we should go with that, up to £30,000 for the toilet block? Yes, all agreed. Thank you very much. Right, I think that concludes the agenda. I just to report back that I met with the Cobtree Charity Committee along with Mike a couple of last week, one day, I can't quite remember when, to introduce myself and to get over the surprise that they didn't get the leader of the council as the chair. But I explained my background on grant committees and blah, 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 and they seemed quite happy with the idea in the end. So that might be quite a good way of building some bridges as well with them, because in the past I think the chair of this committee has been a bit high-handed with them, and that's not really my style, so we might get on a bit better this from now on, particularly as we're quite keen to make an application for funds for the playground for our part of the estate. So I'd report back on that. If there's nothing else, I declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much.